Right, guys, it is my pleasure to have joined with me today my very good friend, Michael. Michael is the CEO of Reclaim Design, hailing from South Africa. And I've really been looking forward to this chat with you. And so, Michael, to start with, how are you keeping, my friend?
Very good. Thank you, James. Very good. I
Good.
hope everyone else is as well.
Yes, we do find ourselves in interesting times, and we'll come on to what you are doing currently. But how, if at all, has this current so-called global pandemic affected you, Michael?
Well, in the same way that I think most people are being affected by no income, no one's able to trade at the moment. We're in quite strict lockdown in South Africa.
Right.
So they've only recently allowed e-commerce to start happening again. But for the last 7 weeks, basically, unless you worked in a medical field or in the food industry, shopping supermarkets, you're not allowed to operate.
Okay.
So we've been impacted in as much that we have no money coming in. But as I was mentioning to you earlier, it's not the first time that's happened for me. You know, through life so far, many times I've had no money. And at the time of those things happening, you think you really don't want to be in that situation. But looking back, it's like having practice. It's like a trial run. Each time you have a difficulty, you get a little bit stronger. I mean, it sounds very cheesy, but it's actually very true.
Yes.
The more practiced you are at something, the more able you are to deal with it and to navigate it.
Absolutely.
So fortunately or unfortunately, that means suffering's inevitable and necessary.
Yeah. No,
And if we shy away from it,
yes.
we're just going to be stuck all the time, aren't we? Running around like headless chickens, being panicked by everything that gets thrown to us. Life throws a lot of different curveballs, doesn't it? In all sorts. I mean, look at this. Who would ever have thought the world would be locked down in a virus situation? It sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie,
That's right.
but it's happening, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And so if we have some reserves to draw upon, how do you get reserves? It's like yourself. You train for many years in martial arts. How do you get better? You have to really go through the grinder, don't you? You have to train hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with mental and emotional and all the rest. It's not just, you know, it's across the board. The same rules apply, don't they?
Absolutely, Michael. I do like what you say about changing one's perspective and viewing suffering not as maybe an enemy, but as rather, dare I say, a friend. Can you give an example in your own life, Michael, of now with the benefit of hindsight, knowing as we do it's 2020, where previous suffering, nay hardship, has better helped equip you deal with today's challenges?
Yeah, well, yes, there's been a lot. I suppose it would be, in terms of thinking about where I've had the most suffering, was around when I was probably 24 year old, and things just went. I was also previous to that. Let me try and give a backstory a little bit.
Please.
I was bullied at school, and so from that, I went into martial arts as well. And I took it very seriously, and I basically trained like it was my life was on the line. That's how seriously I took it.
Yeah.
And then I did not dissimilar to you. I thought I'm going to push the tempo. Right, I'm a skinny guy. I'm a small guy, and then I thought I'm in Aberdeen. What will I do? I'll become a bouncer in the docks in Aberdeen, and they're like, "You're mental." No, I'm going to do it, and I did. But I developed a serious anger problem. It was horrendous. I hated everyone, James.
Yeah.
And so over a period of about probably from about 15 to about 21. So what's that? 6 years.
Yes.
I hated everybody, literally everybody. And I kept everyone at a big distance. And of course, you can't live your life like that, can you?
No.
So sooner or later, it comes back to bite you. And it did. It did with me, but not in a further down the line. I was in a relationship with someone. We were living together. And that went badly wrong. I mean, it went really badly wrong. And from that, I was probably 23. I felt completely suicidal, which I'd not actually felt before. I felt very angry before, but I'd never felt suicidal. So that was a new one on me. And I felt completely desperate, actually. I didn't really see any hope or any light at the end of the tunnel, nothing. I just thought there's really no point to being on this planet, you know, at all. not just with the relationship was just a trigger. There was many other things that came to light about me, and the feeling, the hate. The hate thing does not work. It
No.
just eats you up from the inside. So I had to go to the very bottom of feeling there's literally no hope, to actually letting go of, I was very judgmental previously. I thought I knew a lot. I mean, it's ridiculous. An angry 21-year-old who thinks he knows everything and about people. I know nothing about anything, and I know nothing about anything is what I've learned so far in life.
Yeah.
And then there's a relaxing that happens with that. The minute you start letting go, you think, I don't have the answers. I don't know if anyone has the answers, but I'm going to stay open to what comes my way.
Yes.
And if I can do that, I might have a chance. And I'm still here now. I'm 47 years old now. So something must have worked, because I've relaxed into, I mean, to say that I don't get angry, that wouldn't be true. I sometimes have very interesting moments of anger. It's a lot less than it ever used to be, but it's still there. It's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing process.
Yes.
But my point I think I'm trying to make is I had to really go, and I'm not saying this has to happen for everyone at all.
No.
This is my experience of things. So I'm not saying everyone needs to feel suicidal to get benefit at all. In fact, it would be much better if you didn't. But if you are going through those kind of experiences now, which I'm sure, the world is the world and humans are humans, there must be many who are.
Yes.
It doesn't mean it's the end of the road, If you can just zoom out, that's the thing. We get so fixated, blinkered vision on what, it's actually quite self-absorbed. We think it's my suffering, me. It's like, we're not the only ones to have gone through this, obviously. And there are reserves you can draw on. There's aspects in ourselves that if we don't spend the time, that's the thing, is if we don't look in at all or question, ruminate, think about things, we're never going to sort of plumb the depths, are we?
No.
If everything's always out, watching TV, working hard, doing this, having relationships, it's all out, nothing wrong with, all great, fantastic. However, that's really not the be all and end all, because who is the common denominator underneath all of that? It's me, And if we don't know ourselves, I mean, what was it who is it who said, know thyself?
Yes.
Some Greek geezer, I can't remember his name.
I believe. Yes.
Know thyself. What does that
Plato,
mean?
one of them, yeah.
But it's very true, isn't it? You have to know yourself. If you don't know yourself, you've got no chance. Yeah. So this is why this situation with the global pandemic is actually quite fantastic, because everyone now has the time. Before, I can't do it. There's always the way, I don't have the time. I have this to pay. I have this job to do. There's so many things on. I can't do it. No one can say that now, except maybe if you make face masks, maybe you're going off the chart with those. But people have the time now. So look on that. That is a huge positive to come from this. Absolutely. It's an immense positive to come from this. Look at that. Right, I've got the time. I've always wanted the time. I always say I don't have the time. I have the time. Okay, I don't have any money, but you don't need money to look inward. Yes. So it's a win-win.
That's very powerful. I like that, Michael. You don't need any money to look inward. And my friend, can you actually begin to share, please, some of the maybe tips, tools and strategies, techniques that you initially used to look inward? What does that mean for somebody that just has no idea where to start?
Sure, totally. I mean, it's very confusing at first. It's totally confusing because it makes no sense initially at all. When you're looking outward, nothing. I'm going to go backwards and sort of explain forwards, because it's an ongoing process. This is like 20-something years, James. So it's not like, some people, it does happen that way, I've heard. But that is not the majority. The majority, it's a slow process, like building yourself in a gym. It takes time and it takes effort and it takes persistence. I started with Buddhism purely because, funnily enough, this is how life works, isn't it wonderful? The girl that I explained earlier all went wrong. It went. One of the things she did is she bought me a book by a Buddhist monk called Thich Nhat Hanh. Now, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's an amazing, Zen monk. And it was called Peace is Every Step. Okay. I took the book, and just because she gave it to me, and we were basically at loggerheads, I threw it in the drawer. I'm not reading that. Then it all went really badly wrong, and we separated and went our ways. And sometime later, a month or two later, I found it in the drawer again. I thought, I better read this thing, man, because peace. I saw the word peace. I thought I could really use some of that now. So let's just see. And that with that openness, because before I thought peace every step. That sounds whatever, you know. I wasn't very open-minded. And like I said, I had a very hard approach to people and to myself, especially, actually. That peace sounded like some sort of wishy-washy nonsense.
Yeah.
And thought that's not like the way you do things. It's got to, you know, you've got to grit your teeth and get on with it. And that, my friends, is not the way to go. Just let's clear that up right now. Nothing wrong with being motivated and focused, but that whole stiff upper lip thing. So anyway, peace is every step. I started reading this book. I was nearly in tears, James. The man he wrote so beautifully, so kindly. That's something I hadn't appreciated. I hadn't had many interactions that were kind.
No.
And this wasn't even an interaction. It was just through a book by proxy. But it really made me stop. And simple exercises, that's the other thing. He gave brilliant exercises to get you in the right zone for what we're talking about.
Yes.
About he talks about mindfulness, right? So what's mindfulness? Mindfulness is just paying attention to what you're doing right now. Like you and I are talking. So I'm not thinking about walking the dog or what my job's going to be happening. You know, will I earn this much next month? No, I'm talking to you. I'm with you.
Yes.
So it could be washing the dishes. It's the same thing. What are you doing? You're washing the dishes. You're brushing your teeth. Everything. You just pay attention to that. And your mind doesn't want to do that. So that's not easy to do.
No.
It is not easy to do. But that's what you must do if you want to move forward. You keep coming back. And notice I'm pulling in. It's you. You're coming back to you. The present is you.
Yes.
So if you want to do, say, you know, I don't know, you're suffering from anxiety, which I'm sure a lot of people are right now. Your mind's going to want to say, you know, this. That's the other thing. Watching media, that doesn't help. You can be informed, but you don't need to inundate yourself 24 hours a day with all these news stories.
Certainly.
That will be counteractive to what we're talking about now.
Yep.
Everyone knows the coronavirus is there. So, okay, how much more do you need to know about that? Yep. You also know how to take care of yourself with it and how to social distance and, you know, the basic precautions. That's all that's needed. Yes. We don't need to keep all these statistics. 500,000 people have died, and it doesn't help us. So know what's necessary. I'm not saying be an ostrich and put your head in the sand, but then leave that aside and then start focusing on what this is doing, you know, because the mind is going to go, oh my God, what are we going to do for money? This is terrible.
That's right.
Negative. And it's going to keep going, you know, like a circle. You have to break that circle. So okay, what am I doing right now? And it's funny because the minute you start looking right now, what's the problem right now? The only problem is your thinking. That's it. That is all the problem. Right now, I am actually healthy. You know, I'm sitting here, I'm alive, I have food. But it's not even as simple as that. You can still be fine without those things. You know, like literally you just sit and you think, there's nothing bothering me right now except my mind. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's very profound.
You know?
Very
profound. Sorry, James, I don't want to keep going. So
no, this Michael, this is absolute. I was going to say knowledge bombs, but I like wisdom because as I've come to appreciate in my own life, particularly as when I was a young man, we can acquire all sorts of fantastical knowledge. Some of it quite whimsical, some of it quite intelligent, dare I say. But unless it's actually implemented by action and in one's own life, it's somewhat redundant. Because we're drowning in information in this digital age of how to look after ourselves, but then why are the male suicide statistics at an all-time high? So knowing is not enough. Application is enough. And Michael, with that being said, can you tell me that in your life previously, at what junction, looking back, did this from reading the knowledge. So, okay, that book came into your life.
Mm.
Where do you think the the real driver, the prime mover, the motivator, the
Hmm.
motivation, excuse me, to start
Hmm.
implementing said knowledge? Where did that come from, my friend?
That started straight away, and it was because it was tied into the desperation. I thought it basically was like this: if I don't change something, I am going to die.
Yeah.
That was how it is. I will kill myself. That is it. If I'm going to have it one last shot at like seeing if there's something out here that I don't understand, that I can try and understand to make me see the world better, because I see it in such bad terms now that I cannot even comprehend living another year, you know. I actually didn't think I'd make it to this age. I really didn't. I
Yes.
thought I'd be lucky to reach middle age. So, and here I am still just about kicking
Wonderful.
in. But the desperation's what drove me. And I read the other thing that I was doing. I didn't just read this book. There were my mum. I actually called my mum and the lowest of the low shame, because I actually, something inside me said, if you kill yourself now, how crap will that be for your family? Without at least telling them so they know how you've what's going on.
Yeah.
So I did, and then they said, "Come home," because I was living in London at the time, and they weren't. So I did, and I said, I just don't know what to do. Basically, I'm completely at a loss how to live, you know. And my mum didn't really know how to answer, bless her, but she did say, "Well, have you been to the doctor?" And I said, "Well, you know, I haven't been to the doctor." And as I said, I wanted to stay open. So I would have said normally, no way, what are they going to do? Well, I don't know. I'll give it a go. All right, I'll go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor, and doctor, being a doctor, said, well, you know, why don't we put you on, well, I can't remember what it was, some drug or other. And I was like, you know, I don't want to do that, because even though weirdly, I feel completely desperate. If I have to rely upon a pill to get through the day, then again, I may as well be dead. In my mind, I am not saying what I am not saying
Yeah.
is that other people
Yeah.
shouldn't go ahead
Of course.
and
Yeah.
and take medical advice.
Yes.
This is just my experience
Yes.
only. My
Absolutely.
brother had to go through that process, and I would never have said he shouldn't go through it, because it's everyone's different in that way. You know,
Well
you've got to
said.
do what you got to do.
Yes.
I'm just saying from me. So just to get that out there. So he suggested, why don't you then try group therapy at the hospital? They have a psychiatric unit. And I was like, all right, I'll give that a go. Why not? So they put me in there. And then again, really weirdly, I thought I was extremely depressed. I really felt very angry and very depressed at the same time. I got into the group and quickly realized I wasn't nearly as depressed as I thought, because some of the stories that were being shared, I was like, oh my God, wow, that's some pretty bleak shit right there, you know. I thought my concerns suddenly don't seem nearly as bad, you know. So it put things in perspective a bit
Yes.
straight away, which was a start. And then we had weekly meetings with a psychiatrist, and he said to me, he said, "So what's your problem then?" And I was like, explained, and I said, I'm basically angry all the time." He goes, "You're not angry." I was like, "I bloody am." He's like, "You're not angry." I was like, "I am angry." And he goes, "You're not. I know angry." And I was like, okay, so I'm not depressed, and I'm actually not as angry as I thought. And then the Buddhist book was there. So I was busy reading through that. I thought, right, well, there were some great things that that going to that group therapy uh, lodged in my head. There's simple things. Like, for instance, black and white thinking. They spoke about that. They said, which is what humans do, isn't it? We all have black and white thinking, actually, to a greater or lesser degree. It's like something is this way or it's that way.
Yeah.
This is the right way. This is the wrong way. It is not like that. It is never like that. It all depends where you're standing and how you see the world.
Yeah.
So if you can understand that, then for one thing, you don't judge anymore. It's amazing. You know, you're like, this is right, that is wrong, this is good, this is bad, coronavirus is terrible. Well, is it? You know, it's yes. There's some aspects of it. There's not just that, is it? There's a whole spectrum. There's a whole spectrum. You have to embrace all of it. If you embrace all of it, No problem. It's no problem. Nothing can hurt you. That's the most amazing thing. Then you're not afraid anymore. It's like, okay, this is horrendous, but it's also not horrendous.
Mhm.
And also, this is the cycles of life. Everything's wavelengths, isn't it? It's ups and downs. I mean, everyone look at their own lives. Look at your own lives. It's always an up and always a down. It's inevitable. You cannot avoid it. Everyone always wants the up. I only want money. I only want a good relationship. I only want this. I want it. I'm sorry to break it to you. You're on a hiding to nothing. Enjoy those things while they're there. I'm not saying don't enjoy them. Fantastic while they're there. Do not identify with them.
Yes.
Like, oh, this is me. My relationship defines me. My job defines me. Because then when they're not there, you're fucked.
Yes. That's very powerful.
Sorry, are we allowed to swear? No,
Of
probably
course,
better
of
not
course.
to.
Yeah.
I can't help it. That's something that's one thing that I do still a lot, unfortunately. Nikki pulls me up on. So I'm trying to minimize. I actually find it an enthusiastic way of speaking, weirdly enough.
Yes,
So,
Michael, as we know, words are words. They only have their power to offend if you allow. Again, it's a mental construct. A word is a word. A word
it's
is simply a
totally,
word. But as you
totally.
say, I love that, what you say about that perspective again we come back to, and about embracing. Oh, it's such a beautiful thing when you said, I previously, as you just want the highs, but what came before that, the journey inevitably to any kind of goal, in the gym, in relationships, in business, in commerce, eventually on the way to any kind of success, however you defined it, there were some challenges. And yet, why don't we see the challenges as being part of the overall success? For when we do that, we can embrace them as warmly and as closely as we do the highs, the so-called highs. In actual
Mm,
truth, I've come to see it all as like a flat line, but far from being dead, that is the very dash between one's birth and death. It's
yeah.
all beautiful, if
Mm,
again seen with the right perspective. Michael, can you tell me a little, please, about your childhood? Where did you
mm.
grow up, and so on?
Well, in my early years, my dad moved around the world a lot with his job, so we went with him. So I actually, funnily enough, grew up in South Africa from about the age of 6 to 10 or so. Previous to that, we were living, I think we were in Germany for a bit,
Mm.
and then other places. And then when I was 10, I went to boarding school. So I suppose you could say I really grew up there because we spent most of my time. My parents lived abroad, so I basically lived at boarding school, and
Right.
that was a big challenge for me. I'm quite a bookworm type person. Well, maybe not even a bookworm. I'm quite what's the word? I'm not extroverted. I
Yes.
I don't mind spending time on my own. I'm not a particularly sporty guy. I'm not I'm not a jock. Like
Mm.
the guys at school who were popular were all jocks,
Right.
really good at sports. The nerdy guys, or the ones who are quiet, not really seen. So inevitably, I started to get bullied. It was just a matter of time, and I felt again terrible through that situation, and felt quite a victim actually, because I didn't know, I couldn't escape it. You're living with these guys 24 hours a day. It's a bit like being in prison actually, a very expensive prison. My parents are paying for an expensive prison. Shame. But and it was all seen as character building. I mean, oh my God, there's some strange attitudes there. However, I have obviously had to experience it. And I wouldn't be speaking to you now if I hadn't had those experiences. Who knows what would be happening? So anyway, I got bullied a lot. I felt very bad, very what's the word? Fragile.
Mm.
And then for some reason, I got angry. Now I'm not saying that's good, because then that was another journey. But what the anger thing did do is it stopped the bullying, because I got more angry than the bullies. And I swore, I took it so seriously. I thought, I'm starting martial arts now. Even though we weren't allowed to do it at school, I had to go outside of the school, which was like considered a big deal. But I was like, I don't care. If I have to walk to this class in a town 10 miles away, I'm going to do it. If you want to expel me, you do it. But I'm going to do this. And I took it really seriously, and everyone took the piss out of me at first. You know how kids are. Oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. I thought, keep going, keep going. And then the piss taking stopped, because it the dynamic shifted where I wasn't afraid of them at all anymore. you know, like where I thought I didn't care either. That's the thing. I thought, if you want to knock me down, break my legs, whatever, I will do it back to you. Now, I'm not saying that is a good
Mm.
outlook. I'm only using it as a reference for what's happening, because
Absolutely.
it started me off on that whole depression thing. Further down the line, as I was explaining earlier, it's like the hatred for people. I fostered a hatred for people in myself. I didn't trust anyone,
Yes.
and I assumed everyone was out to do me harm. That's really how I saw things. And then, funnily enough, you start to bring people in who might validate that. You know, you start associating with people who might think the same way as you, and before you know it, it becomes entrenched as a mindset. You know,
Yes.
and again, life is the way it is. There are some people who mean harm to you, clearly, and then there's some who are not. But you mustn't. I was identified only with the one way. You
Yes.
know, I didn't see that. In fact, there are kind people as well who
Yes.
don't mean you any harm, and you don't need to be so angry, and you don't need to be the best fighter at all. You know, there's so many. That's the other thing. I used to think that that was strength. When I was younger, it was the physical that was really the strength.
Yeah.
That's what you need. That's what makes you stronger. You know, again, nothing wrong with physical strength. If you've got physical strength, enjoy. Good, fantastic. But does that mean you're strong? It does not mean you're strong. When you're facing yourself and the demons come at night, your strength, your physical strength doesn't count for shit.
No.
What's going to count and what's going to save you is you inside. You know what? You're going to have to be okay with this, because that's the other thing. Physical strength is as temporary as anything else.
Yeah.
You might have it for your whole life. You might end up in a fucking wheelchair. Then what are you going to do? When you're used to being like this champion kickboxer or something, you can't walk anymore. What's going to happen? You're going to have to look in and you're going to really struggle. So now, I think what I'm trying to say is, don't wait until something hectic happens. Like I had to wait till I wanted to kill myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have to wait, but that's what happened. I got to the point of complete desperation. So what I'm trying to say now is, you don't need to wait to get to that point to realize you have to spend time working in, because if you do it now, you're going to weather those difficulties much easier. The difficulties that come, you'll weather them much easier. So you start now, you know, just gently do it. Gently do it. You don't have to. That's the other thing. I've got a very much 100% or nothing approach. Now that can be a benefit. It's also not, like with the martial arts, threw myself in. Then it became meditation. I was like, right, that's it. That's the one. 10 hours. I've got to sit here, not move. Do not move. Like, you know, it's like military.
Yeah.
But that's not it either. Just be nice to yourself, man. You know, like it sounds so inane, but it's not inane. If you're having a cup of tea, just sit, have a cup of tea, enjoy. Wow, Anna, this tea, awesome. This is so good. Having a cup of tea. That's all that's needed. You know, it's not like, that's the other thing I used to think is like, you have to reach something.
Yeah.
There's always a goal. Humans are goal oriented, aren't we?
Certainly.
I have to be a black belt,
Yeah.
or I have to become a meditator who's reached these enlightened states that I've read about or heard about, you know, or they're not happening yet, but they will happen if I put more effort in. Effort is a very interesting one. It's a very interesting one. You have to put effort in, but you also have to know it has nothing to do with it whatsoever,
Yes.
which is, it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
But you have to be okay with the paradox that life is full of paradoxes. Again, it's like encompassing everything, like
Absolutely.
effort, no effort. That's also part of the up and down. It's like part of that up and down duality. You have to be okay with the truth might sit in between the two. You know what I mean?
Very well said. Yeah, it's a seeming dichotomy where two
Mm,
seemingly disparate states are nevertheless intimately and explicitly intertwined.
totally.
Yeah, as you say, superficially, they're seemingly incongruent. And yet, when we play both, because I've come to see it not as two sides, but
Mm,
as you say, a circle.
mm,
And at some point in the journey, both are connecting, therefore.
mm. When we were in India, I spoke to I didn't speak actually. There's a monk called Father Bede Griffiths. He's dead now, but he opened an ashram. He's a Christian monk who went to India in the 50s, I think it was, and he became a Hindu Swami at the same time. So he had an amazing understanding of very strict monastic vows from the UK and the Hinduism approach. And he basically said, truth is between two opposites. It's the joining of two opposites, you know. I thought that's very true, because it's what you're saying. It's like the joining of the circle, and like the duality. If you focus on one or the other, you're only seeing a part of the picture.
Yes.
It's not that it's not part of the picture. Yes, okay, you might be having a suffering, or you may be having extreme ecstatic states,
Yeah.
but inevitably they will go
Yes.
up or down,
Yeah.
up or down, up or down.
Michael, I just wanted to come back briefly, excuse me, to a powerful point when you said you were alluding to the anger that you felt, in particular towards other people. And you said that you actually self-corrected while you spoke, which I always think is a sign of like really highly intelligent and very present awareness, where initially you said it, meaning the anger towards others changed how you felt, but you then corrected to I. And I found it was littered in my language. I used to say other people made me angry. He made me angry. She did this. The government are shit. But then I realized I was making myself angry. And this was a game changer for me. Can you talk a little about that journey to realizing, or just less blaming others, please?
Sure. Well, you're right in saying 100%, you know, like it's very easy. Again, it's like, are we looking outward or are we looking inward? If you look inward, you're going to start coming to the conclusion quite quickly that your mind state is your mind state. And yes, the circumstances around you can change, and they may feel like they are contributing or causing, but they're not actually. Because again, or let's just take a made up example. Someone, you know, I go up to the shops now, I stand in the queue, someone has a go at me, it pisses me off. Okay, right. So I could say that guy pissed me off by saying whatever he said. Fine. But then I come home and I sit and I think, God, what I should have said to that guy? Oh, I'll bloody tell him next time I see him. And the mind carries on and on and on and on. And when I was younger, this used to go on. I think it might even go on for days. If I was angry enough, I would have the cycle going round about playing over and over and over the scenario, and maybe with different outcomes that I thought were favorable, which were ridiculous, to be quite honest with you, where it involved me winning in some way,
Yes.
you know, whether it be an argument or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's you, that is us. They're not there. They're not sitting in the room with me anymore. That was only the 5 minutes interaction. It's gone. It's long gone a week ago, and then it's still there. So that highlights it's not them.
Yes.
You know, forget that 5 minutes. Look at the weeks that you spend thinking about it. You know, like, I hate that person. I hate them. I'm going to bloody show them, and I'll make them suffer.
Yeah.
That's how I used to see things.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. What a waste of effort. Now put that same energy into being quiet and looking in. You do that, you're going to be a sage. Hands down, guaranteed. You're going to have no problems at all. You put that effort in, going in, no, you'll be fine. That's what we're on this planet. We're all learning together, aren't we? You know,
Absolutely.
and it's a difficult. I'm not saying. Also, I don't want to say it's not difficult.
No.
It's fucking difficult, man. Many times I've thought, what is this shit all about? I have spent so many years doing this, and this, and I still get angry, or I still get upset about this, that, and the other. However, when I'm in the, you know, a calmer state, I realize that things have changed a lot in 20 years, a lot. It's an ongoing journey. It's a gradual chiseling away, isn't it? It's like sculpting yourself.
Yes.
As an analogy, maybe not a very good analogy, but it takes time. It takes time. You do occasionally hear about these sort of saintly people who wake up one day and they're like completely transformed. Now, everyone, obviously, being the quick fix age that we live in, would love that. But I have to be honest, I think the vast majority of people have to go through quite a learning curve a growth, and it involves all sorts. You've got to take it all,
Well,
and then
Michael,
just mm,
just on that point, excuse me, I've actually in my own life, I've
mm,
begun, which speaks very directly to this. I've actually sat and thought about this, and I think the whole enlightenment process has been
mm,
somewhat misunderstood. And
mm,
this instant realization that people
mm,
think is it, the
mm,
instant realization that I came to, and I believe is one interpretation of enlightenment,
mm,
isn't a one-time deal, I'm done, set for life, but rather the realization, the
mm,
enlightenment that the sages speak of, was that
mm,
it is a gradual unfoldment and an ongoing process. So that may have occurred in a nanosecond, overnight, if you like. But
mm,
then the enlightenment, like the layers of the onion, or we peel the satsuma, continues
mm,
until one's physical death in this lifetime.
mm, mm,
So
mm, mm,
everyone looking for this
mm,
one-shot deal, that
mm,
doesn't exist. What
mm,
does is a gradual dawning of appreciation of the
mm.
gradual unfoldment of life. That is the enlightenment.
And then you're going to come back. You can, nothing wrong with reading or going to spiritual talks, or not, even if you don't want to call it spiritual. I mean, people have a thing when people, sometimes you say spiritual and they think, oh, religion. Doesn't have to be that way, but you have to use the words, don't you? So
Sure.
when we say spiritual, inward, uh, inward talks or something,
Yeah.
that's great, because they can inspire you, right? And if they inspire you, then you're more likely to go on that journey inward.
Yes.
However, to go only for those things and just realize, well, I've read 5,000 books on Advaita Vedanta, or whatever it might be, wonderful, wonderful. But then it becomes another ego pursuit of like, well, I'm now so intelligent, I know all about this. That doesn't mean, then you're missing the point. Really, you could read one book
Yes.
and then apply what's in there. Read one chapter, one paragraph at a time. Think
Yes.
about it
Yeah.
for that whole week, and apply and apply. That's all. It's not about consuming. Well, that's the other thing that humans love to do. We love to consume and consume. The next book, the next video, the next, whatever it might be.
Yes.
That's why capitalism does as well as it does, I suppose. We just constantly want stuff. The
Oh,
same thing
Michael.
applies when people have a spiritual bent. You can sometimes see that happening as well.
Yes.
And me too. I've read quite a few books, but much less now. I try only to get inspired.
Absolutely.
If I'm having a period of difficulty, or period of difficulty, I can get some inspiration. It's almost like you're sitting there with that saintly person whose book it is.
Yeah.
You think, this is brilliant. I'm getting, direct transmission, so to speak, of the what I need to be focusing in on.
Yes.
And that's where the internet's actually also can be quite amazing. It's a two-edged sword, because it's full of rubbish as well, and you have to use wisdom or discernment to work out what's useful and what isn't. And that can be a process in itself. But with YouTube, I mean, you can see recordings of these guys talking about what they talk about, whatever works for you as well. That's the thing. Is again, I'm not saying Buddhism was helpful for me, and things like various Hindu philosophies, they help me. Does that mean that that's the way? No, not at all. Whatever works for you, run with it.
Yes.
Run with it right to the end and see where does it take you. And then you'll have your own wisdom about that. It's not about people tell you, you should do this to get enlightened, or to know God, or whatever their terminology is in the particular tradition that you're investigating. Fine, go for it. You must come to your understanding, though. You are the one. It has to, the wisdom that's going to help you is in you, and you have the answers in you.
No, it's very powerful, Michael. I'd like to pick this up in part 2. Allow me to
Sure.
pause it there, and we'll keep this going. Thank you for your time so far. Thank you.
No problem.